Maybe you clicked just out of curiosity, or maybe, without even realizing, you were looking for a quiet place where words arrive gently and silence is part of the conversation. I wrote this story with care, like stitching together memories, hurts, and little discoveries, hoping that somewhere along the way, you might see a piece of yourself here. If that happens, even for a moment, stay. Listen as long as you'd like. And if you feel like it, leave a small sign. A simple "I'm here" in the comments can mean more than you know. If this space brings you comfort, a quiet like, share, or subscribe helps me keep it alive. No pressure, just gratitude for your company. My name's Rachel Carter, I'm 30, and for most of my life, I believed I could survive anything if I just stayed quiet long enough. It's a bad habit I picked up as a kid, growing up in a house where silence meant safety. I was the easy one, the background daughter. My little sister Chloe, she was the golden girl. Loud, fiery, and impossible to ignore. My parents adored her chaos and called it passion. My calmness, they called it boring. I learned early that in our house, love was loud, and quiet kids like me didn't get much of it. Fast forward to now, I'm a single mom, raising my 7-year-old daughter Laya in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in suburban Ohio. Life isn't glamorous, but it's ours. I work from home as a freelance copywriter, bake cookies on weekends, and spend my evenings helping Laya paint little watercolor flowers on scrap paper. That Sunday, we were invited, well, more like expected, to have lunch at my parents' place. It was supposed to be family time, but I knew the drill. Chloe would steal the spotlight, my parents would orbit her, and I'd be furniture in the room. Still, I tried to make it special. Laya and I spent the morning baking chocolate chip cookies together. I dressed her in her favorite yellow cardigan, brushed her soft brown hair into 2 little braids, and told her, "Grandma and Grandpa will love these cookies." I didn't say out loud the part about wanting to prove we were okay, even without a man around. The moment we stepped into my parents' kitchen, I smelled roast chicken and fresh rosemary. It almost felt warm, welcoming, until Chloe appeared. Click, click, click. Her stilettos hit the hardwood floor like she owned the house. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, indoors, and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my rent. She gave me a once-over, then looked at Laya. "Wow," she said, tilting her head. "You dressed her like a little librarian." My mom laughed. My dad didn't even look up from his phone. I just smiled, tight-lipped, and set the cookies on the counter. That was my role in this family, quiet, unbothered, invisible. But in that moment, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Something's going to break today," and I had no idea how right it was. Lunch had been going tolerably. I stayed in my usual lane, helping Mom set the table, keeping my voice soft, making sure Laya was on her best behavior. She sat beside me, swinging her little legs under the chair, her eyes fixed on the plate of cookies we'd brought. When my mom finally said, "All right, everyone, let's eat," I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe we'd survive this visit without an explosion. I should have known better. Halfway through the meal, Laya reached across the table for a cookie. Her elbow bumped Chloe's delicate porcelain teacup. The world seemed to move in slow motion. The cup tipped, tea splashed across the tablecloth, and the soft pink floral pattern shattered into a dozen shards on the floor. Chloe shot up from her chair like she'd been set on fire. "You little brat!" she screamed, her voice ricocheting off the kitchen walls. Laya's lip trembled, her big brown eyes filling with tears. "Chloe," I started, my voice shaky, but she was already moving. In a flash of anger, Chloe grabbed the kettle sitting on the stove. Steam curled from the spout. It had just finished boiling. I didn't even have time to think before she flung the water toward the tile floor, so close to Laya's tiny legs that the heat rose in a cloud around us. Laya shrieked and scrambled into my arms. I clutched her tight, feeling my own heart pound against her back. My legs shook. My breath came out in a ragged gasp. And then I looked up. My parents just watched. No shock, no rush to comfort my daughter. Just that familiar mix of irritation and indifference. Mom's voice was almost casual. Chloe just gets a little passionate, that's all. Dad didn't even glance our way. If you taught your kid to sit still, this wouldn't happen. I froze, holding my daughter, feeling the world tilt. It wasn't the boiling water or Chloe's scream that broke me. It was that look, that cold, empty nothing in my parents' eyes. In that moment, I knew. This family would never protect me, and they would never protect my little girl. I sat there, paralyzed. My arms locked around Leia, realizing something deep and irreversible had just cracked inside me. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stood up from the table, my arms wrapped tight around Leia, who was still trembling against my shoulder. My voice came out flat, almost mechanical. "Thanks for lunch." Chloe scoffed, and Mom muttered something about me being oversensitive, but I didn't look back. I carried my daughter out the door, feeling the sharp winter air slap my face as if the world itself was reminding me I was alive and responsible. I buckled Laya into her car seat, her small hands still shaking, then slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, I just stared at the house I grew up in, the faded blue siding, the curtains Mom had sewn when I was 10, the porch where I used to sit with my library books while Chloe twirled in her princess dresses. A lump rose in my throat. That house was never really home, I thought, because inside those walls, love always had conditions, and I had never met them. The engine hummed as we pulled away, and the silence in the car was suffocating. Laya stared out the window, her reflection small and pale in the glass. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay, but I didn't even believe it myself. That night, the nightmares began. I woke to the sound of soft sobs. Rushing into Laya's room, I found her curled up in a ball, whispering, "Please, don't yell at me. I didn't mean to." My chest cracked open. I held her until she fell back asleep, her little fist clutching my shirt like it was a lifeline. By the third night, I knew this wasn't something she could just get over. The boiling water, the scream, the way her grandparents did nothing, it had left a mark I couldn't see, but I could feel in my bones. The next morning, I made an appointment with a child psychologist. I told the doctor everything, the spilled tea, the kettle, my parents' cold indifference. He nodded, listening carefully, and then said, "Rachel, I'm going to document all of this, for her well-being and for yours. Keep records. If this ever escalates, these files will matter." I left the clinic with Laya holding my hand and a folder of notes tucked under my arm. It wasn't just medical paperwork, it felt like armor. Somewhere deep inside me, a storm was forming, and my family had no idea. 3 weeks passed. I hadn't called. I hadn't texted. I blocked the group chat where Mom sent daily photos of Chloe's brunches and called it family updates. I needed silence, space for me and Laya to breathe. But the silence didn't last. One Tuesday morning, my inbox pinged with an email that made my stomach drop. Subject: Notice of Legal Action, Custody of Leia Monroe. I clicked it with trembling fingers. A neatly scanned PDF filled my screen. My parents and Chloe were petitioning for guardianship of Laya. They claimed I was emotionally unstable, and intentionally isolating the child from her grandparents, which could harm her development. I stared at the words, the room spinning. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then I saw the signature line. Attorney, Nathan Cole. Nathan, Chloe's fiancé? Of course, a perfect little family conspiracy. Shock gave way to something sharper. Clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to document everything. I pulled out the folder from Laya's therapist, session notes detailing her night terrors, the traumatic family incident, and recommendations for limited contact with aggressive relatives. Next, I scrolled through my phone. Mom's texts scolding me for raising a soft, timid child. Chloe's voice notes mocking Laya's clothes and calling her pathetic. And then there was the recording. I hadn't even realized my phone, left on the counter that day, had captured Chloe's scream, the sharp clatter of the teacup, and the hiss of boiling water splashing onto the tile. I listened with my headphones on, my hands cold and steady. Every sound was proof. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, Laya asleep in the next room, and I organized it all. Medical reports, therapist notes, screenshots of texts and emails, audio recording labeled Incident January 14th. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one, but it would be on my terms. I looked at the legal email again and whispered to myself, "You have no idea what you've started." By the time the sun rose on Friday, I had stopped shaking. Fear had turned into something sharper. Strategy. I wasn't just a single mom fighting alone. I had a background they had forgotten about. Years ago, before Leia was born, I worked with a nonprofit that helped domestic abuse survivors navigate the legal system. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew every form, every loophole, every timeline that could shield a victim from further harm. So, I used it. That morning, I walked into the county courthouse with a neatly organized binder. Therapist letters, medical documentation, screenshots of my mother calling me an unfit drama queen. The audio recording of Chloe's scream, followed by the hiss of boiling water. By the afternoon, the judge had signed an emergency protective order against Chloe. She was legally barred from coming within 300 feet of Laya. The first domino had fallen. While digging through my old files to prepare for court, I found something else. Something I hadn't thought about in years. A dusty binder labeled Monroe Family Trust and Investments. Back when I worked in accounting, I'd helped Dad set up their tax filings. Legally, I was still listed as a co-owner of a family investment fund they opened when I was 18. I checked the balance online, half expecting it to be empty. Nope. $126,000 sat there, untouched. My hands shook again, but this time from adrenaline. Under the terms of the trust, I could withdraw my share anytime, and that's exactly what I did. By Monday, the money was in my account. By Tuesday, Dad was leaving me furious voicemails. "You've ruined us, Rachel. We needed that for the retirement community. How could you?" Here's the thing about custody battles in the U.S. Courts look for financial stability and safe housing when considering guardianship. By pulling my share, I hadn't just taken what was legally mine. I'd stripped my parents of the very asset they planned to flaunt in court. And without that investment income, their application for the Premium Assisted Living Center they bragged about, denied. I sat on my couch that night, Laya asleep beside me, scrolling through the court notice of my granted emergency order. The game had changed. I wasn't the scared daughter anymore. I was the plaintiff, the strategist, and the quiet storm they never saw coming. And the best part? I still had one card left to play. For weeks, I had played defense, collecting evidence, filing orders, and moving in silence. But now, it was time for offense. Chloe lived for her image. To the outside world, she was Chloe Monroe, the stylish lifestyle influencer, all soft smiles and pastel aesthetics. Brands sent her free makeup, clothes, and even paid vacations, and she never stopped posting about her perfect life. That morning, she went live on Instagram, gushing about a new contract with a luxury beauty brand. She twirled in her sunlit apartment, holding a box of lipsticks. "I'm just so grateful for my fans. You're my family," she said, blowing kisses into the camera. It made my stomach turn, because I knew the truth. The world saw sparkle. I saw the woman who nearly scalded my daughter with boiling water. That night, I made a private Reddit account under a generic name. Concerned Parent 84. I posted the 30-second clip I'd been saving, Chloe's voice, shrill and venomous. "You little brat! Look what you did!" The slam of a teacup. Laya's tiny, shaky voice. I'm sorry." And finally, the hiss of boiling water hitting hardwood floors. The title I gave it? "This influencer isn't who you think she is." Within 24 hours, the post hit Reddit front page. TikTok got a hold of it next, and the duets started rolling in. People gasping. Child psychologists dissecting Chloe's behavior. Former classmates of hers chiming in with, "She was always like this." The hashtag #, Chloe Monroe exposed, trended by day 3. By day 4, her beauty brand posted an Instagram statement. "We do not tolerate abusive behavior. We have ended our partnership with Chloe Monroe, effective immediately." Her follower count dropped 50,000 in a weekend. Fan accounts turned into hate pages. Then, someone leaked her old DMs where she mocked her own fans. "Ugh, my followers are so desperate. They'll buy anything I hold up on camera." The internet had officially turned. I didn't gloat, I didn't comment, I didn't even smile. But that night, I watched Chloe post a tearful apology on her now private account. I could see in her eyes the perfect life she weaponized against me was starting to crumble in her own hands. And this was just the beginning. It was a Saturday morning, quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher. Laya sat at the kitchen table, coloring a picture of a treehouse, her little tongue peeking out in concentration. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't fidgeting or looking over her shoulder. Then, bang, bang, bang! Someone was pounding on my front door. I peeked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. My parents and Chloe. Chloe's sunglasses were gone, her eyes red and swollen. Mom was shaking with rage, and Dad's jaw was tight as stone. "Mom, Rachel, open this door. We need to talk." "Chloe, you're destroying this family. You ruined my career." I inhaled slowly, then turned the lock. The door opened just enough for them to see me, and the legal document in my hand. "Rachel." "Here's my answer. Court-issued restraining order. You are not allowed within 200 feet of me or Laya." Dad blinked like he didn't understand. Mom sputtered. "Mom, this is insane. We're your family." I stepped onto the porch, heart pounding but voice steady. "Rachel." "No." "Family protects each other. Family doesn't throw boiling water at a child. What you call family is abuse, and you covered it up." The words hit like stones in still water. Even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. Chloe tried to lunge forward, but I held up the document. "Rachel, take one more step, and I call the police. That's not a threat. It's a promise." For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Dad's eyes. Not for me, not for what they'd done, but for the loss of control. They weren't the untouchable monarchs of the family anymore. "Dad, you'll regret this." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Rachel, no. I regret staying silent for so long." I closed the door. Their muffled voices drifted away, and then silence returned. Only this time, the silence was mine. That night, as Laya slept peacefully, I realized something. They couldn't touch us anymore. And for the first time in my life, my voice had been louder than theirs. 3 months passed like the slow thaw of winter. Laya's nightmares came less often. She laughed again. Real laughter. The kind that rang through our little townhouse and made the walls feel alive. Every evening, we built new routines together. Baking chocolate chip cookies, tending to a tiny balcony garden, and reading stories under a blanket fort. Our lives were no longer lived in fear of the next family lunch. But I couldn't shake the thought. How many other mothers were living in silence like I had? How many little girls were learning that love came with bruises on their hearts? So I started the Quiet Flame Project, a support group for single mothers surviving emotional abuse from their families. At first, it was just me, an old laptop, and a Facebook page. But the stories began to pour in. A mother whose sister called her son a mistake at every holiday. A woman whose parents threatened to sue for custody because she refused to host them every weekend. A teacher who left her child with her mother, only to find cigarette burns near his toys. I knew then I wasn't alone, and neither were they. Then, one day, my inbox pinged. A local reporter had heard about the group and wanted an interview. I agreed on one condition: anonymity. I didn't want the story to be about me. I wanted it to be about the cycle. The article was titled, "The Quiet Flame, Mothers Reclaiming Safety from Family Shadows." Soon after, a popular TikToker who focused on social justice picked up the story. She quoted a line from my interview that went viral. "If they call her passionate, ask why the child is still crying." The comment section flooded with thousands of people saying, "This was my childhood. Thank you for putting it into words." In those moments, I realized I had taken the ashes of my old life and built something new, not just for me and Leia, but for countless mothers and children who had lived in the dark too long. And for the first time, I felt proud. Not for surviving, but for turning pain into purpose. The elementary school auditorium smelled faintly of crayons and floor polish. Paper stars hung from the ceiling, swaying in the breeze of the old ceiling fans. It was Laya's poetry showcase, the first event she had been brave enough to participate in since the tea incident. I sat in the front row, my phone ready to capture the moment, my heart thudding like a drum. When her turn came, Laya walked up to the microphone with a small, nervous smile. Her soft curls framed her face, and she clutched a piece of sky blue paper in her hands. She took a deep breath and began. "Mom told me to speak out loud, even if my voice was small. So I spoke, and the world listened. And now, I'm not afraid at all." Her voice trembled on the first line, but grew stronger with each word. By the last line, she was radiant, her little chin lifted with pride. The auditorium fell silent for a beat. Then, applause exploded. Parents stood, teachers clapped, some people even wiped away tears. A wave of warmth filled my chest, almost enough to erase the years of feeling invisible. Almost. Then I saw them, my parents. They were standing near the back of the auditorium, dressed neatly as if they belonged here. But no one approached them. No one greeted them. They looked out of place. Chloe wasn't with them. Maybe she knew better than to show up where whispers might follow her. For a split second, my mother's eyes met mine. There was no fire, no scolding, no lecture. Just the quiet, unmistakable look of someone realizing they had lost their place in our story. When the applause finally died down, I wrapped my arms around Laya. Her little heart thumped against mine as she whispered, "Mommy, they liked it." I kissed her hair and smiled. "Baby, the whole world liked it." In that moment, justice didn't feel like a gavel or a courtroom. It felt like a 7-year-old girl holding her head high, and the people who once broke us standing in the shadows, watching a life they could no longer touch. The late afternoon sun poured through the kitchen windows, spilling gold across the tiled floor. Laya was perched on the counter, swinging her legs while I pulled a fresh tray of cookies from the oven. The smell of chocolate and sugar wrapped around us like a warm hug. I scooped her up and twirled her, barefoot, across the kitchen. She squealed, laughing so hard she almost dropped her cookie. For the first time in what felt like years, our house was filled only with joy. No judgment, no whispers, no fear. "Mommy," she giggled, "we're dancing in the kitchen." "Yes," I said, spinning her in a circle, "because we can. Because this is our home." Later, we sat on the floor, our backs against the cabinets, crumbling cookies in our hands, chocolate smudges on our fingers. I looked out the window at the quiet street, at the life we had built in this little corner of the world, and for the first time, I felt truly free. No court dates, no angry phone calls, no heavy silence weighing down my chest. Just me and my daughter. Safe, whole, ourselves. I whispered, almost to myself, "Justice isn't yelling in their faces. Justice is living well."